somebody who's dependent on everything else that's around him or other people is not a strong person. That is a weak position. And if people are complaining all the time, then they are depending upon others for their happiness, for their well-being. Therefore, anybody online who's complaining is weak. It's just the way it is. You just do the math. It's a weak position. They're being controlled by something outside of them. In today's episode, we're talking about kids complain, we work. Kids complain, but we work. When you grew up, the goal was to put childishness behind you. When you grow up, it's supposed to mean that you stop acting like a child. But for a lot of us, we are hanging on to one aspect of our childhood. There might be other things that we hang on to, but I know there's one thing we hang on to. If you have kids, you know what complaining sounds like. Now, we give to our children because we love them, obviously. Nobody, who loves their children gives them bad things. We give to our children because we love them. But when you combine what they receive from us at home with what they receive in society in terms of the abundance that they're surrounded with, it can easily give rise to that sense of entitlement and false expectation. Isn't that true? When they receive abundance in the home, and they see so much abundance outside of them, and everybody talking about rights, they can get that sense of entitlement, and they can have these misplaced expectations, and we can raise another generation of whiners. There is this to some degree when the criticism is leveled at millennials, which I think people are being a little too harsh on millennials. You can think that a small group is a larger group only because they have a big microphone. And those who are getting the media attention are a very small group. And there's tons of millennials. I have some millennials for kids, and they are nothing like that generation. So they are not all like that. But one of the things that people talk about when they criticize millennials is that the millennials were raised by my generation, who, just felt like everybody should get a trophy. And so you can't blame the millennials if it was our generation that, taught them these things. But, again, there's a truth to the fact that when you do grow up in such abundance and you're told such things, you get a sense of entitlement and expectation. But I don't think it's isolated to the next generation, man. I think we have it ourselves. People will get older and they'll complain when things don't go their way, just like kids do. Right? Don't kids complain when things don't go their way? Well, do you see that as any different today? You think the people online are any different than that? They're complaining when things aren't going their way. Now, I never permitted this with my kids. Never did. I never allowed this sort of attitude in my kids. In fact, such attitudes always had to be countered, and I did. And it's got to be done so immediately. Correction always has to be immediate. It always has to be in the moment. You can't correct somebody down the road. Otherwise, the impact is just not as strong. So I never permitted this sort of attitude in my kids. Anytime they complained or whatever, I countered it, and I countered it immediately because it was about training them. And this is what correction means. And that's what I was doing. I was correcting an attitude. Correction means to adjust something for a different or better result. Correction means you are adjusting something for a different or better result. I wanted a different result in my kids, in their mindset. But correction is not about, now, obviously, we're not talking about raising kids here. We're talking about correcting your own attitude. But correction is not about being angry. I never corrected my kids in anger. It's not about vengeance. It's about instruction. It's about changing attitudes and behaviors in order to create that better result. I wanted the better result in my kids, and I want the better result in myself. I hope you want that better result in yourself. So what are you correcting? Well, we're correcting the complaining. That's what we're correcting. And so let's look a little bit about what this means practically. Complain is when someone expresses dissatisfaction or annoyance about a state of affairs or an event. Whining is a feeble or petulant form of complaint. There's a difference, right? A feeble or petulant form. There are genuine complaints. You file things to the complaint department, okay? That's a genuine complaint. A whine is a feeble or petulant complaint. And isn't that what we see? It's whining. People are whining when they should be working. People are bitching when they should be building. Well, it's a petulant or feeble form of complaint. Petulant is of a person or their manner when they are childishly sulky or bad-tempered. Petulant is when they are childishly sulky or bad-tempered. Tell me that is not what people are doing today. Childishly sulky and bad-tempered. Their whining, their complaint is feeble. It is childish. It is not based on anything sound. Why do children complain, and how often are their complaints justified? Not much. Why then do we believe our whining and complaining is somehow justified? We ourselves have become bad-tempered. We ourselves have become childishly sulky. We're acting like children, man. That's what we see. We are acting like children, and the nation devours itself. And responsibility and government, these things go to adults, not kids. So this is why a lot of people are where they are in life, and they're not raising up the ladder. They're not rising to the top. You can't get there complaining, man, because you're still a child. And government and control and responsibility goes to the mature. It goes to the adult. So our objective has to be turning whining into work. Our objective has to be turning bitching into building. And that begins when you change the direction of where you place your expectation. Can you dig that? I hope you can.